goes.
All right, so for today, our group chose the traditional versus virtual groups. This will be presented by me, Morgan Stevison, Alyssa McGinnis, and Stacey Holifield for Bryan College for our Introduction to Communication class with Dr. John L. Ashby. So people work in groups all the time. However, in today's technological age, we have the option to work virtually. So are there more limitations to a virtual group than traditional, or does it expand our capabilities? With virtual groups, we can work with people from all over the world. Both presents their own challenges to be overcome, but is one truly better than the other? Some of the aspects that stood out to us when comparing these groups were things like location, communication, and geographic diversity. So let's begin by taking a look at location or co-location.
So the location or physical proximity presents its own unique challenges that must be overcome compared to a traditional group that is able to meet on a regular basis. Some of the things that we found were time management, group trust, and the difference between a short-term group and a long-term group. For the time management, there is flexibility in work hours. Some members' work depends on other people completing theirs in a timely manner for a virtual group. There's also going to be a time difference across the world, which allows people from all different ethnicities to work together on a project. They're not just limited to the people in their town or the town next to them. There's also going to be group trust, building of relationships and bonding is kind of harder to do with someone in a virtual setting because you don't get to interact with them as often. You don't see them face to face. With a short-term group versus a long-term group, we feel like long-term groups will develop a bond over time because they work together often and regularly, whereas a short-term group may not put in that effort because they know they're only going to be working together one time or for a limited amount of time. So for traditional location can become an issue in traditional groups because it's difficult to find a place to meet that all members are comfortable with. It's also kind of difficult to find a meeting location that's within a reasonable distance for all of its members. Location also prevents issues with scheduling. Some people can only meet certain times of the day or certain days of the week. Other factors to consider are, is the location large enough to house your entire group? Is that location going to be quiet enough to be able to communicate and concentrate? Whereas with a virtual group, location's not that much of an issue because all communication is going to take place through a virtual means like email, texting, group video calls. These are all ways that a virtual group can meet to discuss projects. Collaboration's also considered easier because all the documents that we find are going to be shared with other members so that they can add to it and see what the other group's members have found.
Okay, so for the next aspect that is different a little bit between virtual and traditional groups would be the group participation. So with virtual groups, it's more informal communication. People are responding back or working on their projects at different times of the day. Traditional groups, it's more formal communication when you go because you go to meet at a designated place, specific time, and your intention is to work as a group on your project with less distractions and flexibility in your schedules with that. Also, there's for virtual groups, there's a lack of non-verbal cues. And that's, of course, you're not, as a traditional groups, you're not meeting face to face. So you're not interacting with people and seeing their expressions. And so the communication can be a little bit more limited for virtual groups. And there's also there can be a decreased effort in decision making for virtual groups, and more likely to have group members that they won't respond for longer periods of time. In the traditional groups, with everybody there, you're more able to make the decisions, and your presence is required. So physically, so yeah. So as far as with participation, this graph from the Quantum Workplace describes typical employee perceptions of teamwork and engagement. So from this graph, the information I was able to gather, employees are 2.8 times more likely to be engaged when they have clear goals and accountability, which that can be difficult for more virtual groups. And employees are 2.7 times more likely to be engaged when they feel recognized. So team collaboration is key to employee engagement. Again, that participation that we're talking about. So when you're experiencing lack of engagement with your teammates, you can do things like check on in with them periodically. You can make sure they're understanding their tasks and the direction they're going in. Letting them know, help them to feel recognized by letting them know they're doing a good job or they're making good progress. And try to your best to maintain constant communication with your teammates. So for communication for leadership in these two different groups, you're still both looking at what are the goals and the tasks that each of us have. Are they clear and are they defined? Has the group been given or decided upon a team leader? That can be more clear in the traditional groups. The virtual groups, if it hasn't been established, then you kind of got to figure it out between you guys. And with communicating virtually and having that lack of response time can really muddle that. And so the next thing would be, is progress of each individual and the project as a whole being assessed consistently? That's a little bit harder to do with virtual groups. In-person groups, they're kind of able to check and assess that there. And then as far as micromanagement or like over-controlling type of leadership, that doesn't really work with virtual groups. Team delegation and everyone kind of taking a fair, appropriate part in the project, in the task, working as a group will be the way to go for virtual. And then the last aspect of communication that we looked at was managing different modes of digital communication. So that would be really more towards the virtual groups. So as we discussed before, we're doing things together on Zoom, Google Meet, we're doing teleconferencing, we're emailing and texting, project management platforms, you're sharing documents and working together on documents through Google Drive and the OneDrive. So it's a lot. All of those things is a lot, right? So the virtual groups, they are maintaining, doing all of these and communicating through all these means. So it can either be convenient for some groups or it could be a hassle for other groups.
Then we're going to speak about geographic diversity and virtual. The unique experts being brought together through different geography, different cultures interacting, and the language barriers or obstacles, such as the image here on this slide, the time zones, the different people working in different times. Someone at 8 o'clock in the morning may be at 10 o'clock at night for someone else. So we're going to dive into geographic diversity. Virtual teams allow organizations to draw together diverse groups of experts, often from different locations, countries, or fields of experts. They work on projects or solve specific problems online. This can be particularly beneficial for bringing together unique experts that might not be readily available within a single physical or traditional team. Another thing that we want to mention is virtual diversity, which breaks up geographic barriers by connecting people and organizations or companies worldwide and making them process seamless communication regardless of the physical distance or location of those attending these virtual meetings, and a way of understanding of global and local markets, as well as the best business practices.
So there are quite a few similarities between a virtual group and a traditional group. Uh, with either group, you might be working with people that you don't know, someone from a different company, someone halfway across the world, but at the end of the day, you all have a common goal. Both kinds of groups require teamwork and tech skills because you're going to have to look things up. Whereas a virtual group, you need more tech skills. You're doing Zoom meetings, you're sharing documents, you're screen sharing. But a traditional group, you're still sharing documents, you just don't have to go as in depth with it. Some of the differences between the two is potentially having to work in a different time zone virtually. Whereas a traditional group, you're usually right there close together. You might have to travel a town over. Your communication methods are going to vary. Traditionally, you're going to meet in person a couple times a week and talk, whereas virtually, you're going to be Zoom call, texting, and there's also going to be a cultural shock on how different countries work and balance their work life. Some countries, they're not going to work through the weekend like some countries do. They're going to take their break and come back Monday morning. So they're going to have that bit of time to decompress and relax.
So traditional versus virtual, both groups have many things in common as we've listed previously, but they also have some differences which make enough, but do they make enough of a difference that is considered one better than the other? Many people are more familiar with the traditional group, but the virtual group is also becoming more well-known with especially people who are working remotely from home. But with traditional, that is something that we started as early as kindergarten when we learned about teamwork and sharing and communicating and being kind to one another. Both types of groups have their own unique features and a place in the world to accomplish common goals. Traditional groups, pros and cons. For the pros of a traditional group is working together at once, soundboarding with members, and more attentive. Some of the cons is finding a meeting time that works with everyone else's schedule, securing meeting places, and hard to track what was discussed. With your virtual groups and some of the pros and cons, the pros is the schedule flexibility, documented communication or recording for future trainings, and cost savings. You don't have to worry about finding office spaces. The cons is impersonable feel, depending on someone's task being done to do yours, miscommunication or interpretation, interruptions at home, such as your children, people knocking at the door, or even dogs barking. So the conclusion of this is when comparing the advantages and disadvantages of each kind of group, there's no winner or one better than the other. They both have their own advantages and disadvantages. The best way to decide is using them both and seeing which one benefits your needs the most. Some meetings are required face-to-face, while others, such as this group presentation, can be done virtually. For further questions or research, you can review the references that we have documented below.